Hey, hello gang. Thank you for joining me for another episode. While my hands are free, let's do this real quick. Daily Art Adventure number 934, starting, and I wasn't sure what to call it. At first I called it a fantasy, no, that's too much. Then fanciful, that's weird. Anyway, okay, an idealized landscape. I'll explain more what that means as we proceed. So it's a better description might be a mild fantasy, or mildly fantastic would be more grammatically correct, perhaps. Anyway, I'll show you in a bit. This is a commission for my good buddy. Sorry, I didn't do that on purpose, buddy. Hello, Toby. Hello, Uncle 60. Oh, White House briefing. Now watch me, by all means. Watch me instead of the White House briefing. We will. Nothing against the White House or its briefing or its briefs. But all good news here on this channel. All right, let me show you. Oh, I can almost get up there. Not quite. Hang on, let me move you just a bit. There we go. All right, so there's my reference. This painting is being done for Buddy. And let me see. So you can go back a couple weeks and watch me develop this. I'll just show you real quickly. I had 3 thumbnail sketches from that. Oh wait, no. These came first. These 3 thumbnails came first. That's right. And then I colorized them. That's right. And Buddy and I settled on this one. So I took that one and did a more detailed rendering of it. And I did a gouache, and I did a broadcast of this. And then I took this and edited it quite a bit in Photoshop. In the meantime, this is some of the verbiage that flew back and forth between myself and Buddy. Again, just to give you guys an idea, this is some of the notes that I made, etc., etc. And in addition to that, I have 5 or 6 pages like this of photographs of the property around Buddy's house that he wants. Great idea. Incorporated into, or reflected, not incorporated, I think reflected in the painting. So as you can see, there's a lot of green. It's very much a nature scene. So there is a lot of green, brown in the foreground. The most important aspect of this painting, well, you tell me, the most important aspect of any painting is what? Is what? Quiz, class, play of light. Thank you very much, that's correct. The most important aspect of any painting is play of light. So no matter what it's a picture of, still life, portrait, landscape, idealized landscape, it's always mostly about the light. That is not a Dan Nelsonism. That is a straight up art professor, art school, universal art professorism. So it's going to be about play of light. It's going to be about sun coming through the trees, hitting some old Roman columns, kind of like Roman ruins. I want it to have a little bit of a, not quite haunted, what's the word I'm looking for? Mystical, magical, yeah, fantasy-ish. And of course, no matter what it's a painting of, me being me, I'm going to start out with purely abstract whatever, abstract stuff, abstract marks. As I always say, I don't know which of these marks that I'm making right now, I don't know which of them will be evident or visible in the finished painting. I don't even worry about that. All I worry about, so to speak, is that all the marks be attractive or interesting. That's all they have to be. So it's a purely abstract underpainting. I didn't used to do this. It developed little by little over a number of years. I found myself doing more and more and more this kind of thing before it became fully conscious and intentional. Like, wait a minute, I'm going to do a kinesthetic abstract painting under this painting, I would say. So that's become standard operating procedure. And you might have caught that word right there, kinesthetic. That means referring to or pertaining to fitting the body, the way the body moves. And that is exactly what I mean here. It's one of the, I have 6 categories of abstract paintings. I've posted this maybe even a couple times, I'm not sure, but I've posted it on my YouTube community page where I can put still images. It's 6 categories of abstract painting. And the 2 categories reflected primarily in this are kinesthetic, that is big, bold strokes and motions, and compositional, that is I'm thinking about where the major shapes and intersections and so forth are. It doesn't look like I'm thinking about that very much in this painting. All right, just about done. This shouldn't take too long. Let's do some, while I'm right up here, I just happen to have some watercolor pencils here. Once again, just purely abstract. Doesn't matter what they are. If they're done with vigor, enthusiasm, strength, speed, if you will, they will indeed be attractive marks. So I'm done with that. It didn't take long, did it? Just as I said, that shouldn't take long. And now I'm going to, I'll go ahead and use the same 2 brushes I was just using. I'm going to begin to draw the image. Once again, there's my sketch, final sketch. I'll print it out. I have a larger version of it over there to my right, but frankly, I don't think I'll be referring to that one quite as much as the small one right above me. Whoops. I've got a bucket here that doesn't have any water in it. Hang on just a second. There we go. So I want to dip my brushes in there, just not to rinse them, but to get the paint to flow a little more freely. Top of the lake is going to be right about there. I will, later in the painting process, I will probably slap a T-square think that's a little high. I'm going to change my mind already. Move it down about an inch. And I might change my mind and move it back up an inch later on. Who knows? Be that as it may, this is a good opportunity to explain something. The fact that I quote-unquote made a mistake and did a line here and then changed my mind and put it here actually makes the painting better. Man, I don't want to spend a lot of time explaining that. I just want to say, trust me. It makes the paint, the iteration. Do you know what iteration means? Iterative. If something is iterative, that means it's stops and starts, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. That seems to be a good word, sort of metaphorically speaking, for this mistake, if you will, which doesn't bother me. You know, the fact that I made a quote-unquote mistake, I'm really putting it in quotation marks because it's barely, and it makes the painting better. Anyway, start and stop, the stutter, if you will, again, using analogous language of putting a mark in one place, then changing my name and my name's still Dan, changing my mind and putting it somewhere else. It actually is a key trick, if you will, for creating fascinating texture is really a good word. It'll make the painting more interesting. Let me explain something else that I'm doing here. So I guess I'll pick up this large print that I have over here and just show it to you. So here it is, same image, except there was I proposed a statue here at one time, and Buddy said no, so I took it out in the final. But I have a grid here, and I did look at it just a few minutes ago to find out this is the middle of the painting, and there's where I'm putting my horizon. And I did put a grid here, but as you can see, I decided not to put a grid on the large canvas, which would have been perfectly, you know, admissible, if you will, allowable, legal, allowable. But I decided not to do it, and let me tell you why. I decided not to do a grid. In other words, I'm drawing on this canvas more intuitively. I'm not drawing with some carefully prescribed drawing. Okay, and that is a conscious decision I made just a few minutes ago, and it's because I think, now I can't prove this, but I'm pretty sure that sometimes at least, even though I have in a sense worked out all the compositional issues in this sketch, you understand? Worked it out pretty carefully in the sketch. Yep. And it's the same ratio. I've learned that lesson a long time ago. Make sure your sketch is the same ratio as your canvas, 24 by 36 or 2 by 3, and my sketch is also 2 by 3. Even though I've worked out all the issues, I sort of feel like, some of the time at least, that my intuitive drawing on this canvas, which means that I might make quote-unquote mistakes compared to the careful sketch that I did. You know, I'm liable to misplace some things, so to speak, in compared to where they are in the sketch. Am I making sense? Anyway, I'm not going to get it perfect, but I think often that my intuition is sometimes at least better than a mathematical slavish, perhaps, copy of a sketch or same thing with a photograph. Same thing when I'm painting en plein air. In fact, almost always when I'm painting en plein air, I'm almost always painting from a purely intuitive. I'm not gridding or anything like that. There are ways that you can grid en plein air. You can hold a piece of acetate clear plastic in front of you that has grid lines on it. You can do that, and that's perfect. And then you can put lines on your camera. Perfectly legal. Yep. Nothing wrong with that. There have been times when I was doing a plein air painting that I wish that I had done that. But I think there's something. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not confusing self-expression with the intuition I'm talking about is not. Okay, let me expand my, because I want to just see the gesture. Here's. Am I in the picture? Yeah, barely. Here's the gesture for the expressionist painter. You ready? Back of hand to forehead, mouth open, eyes up. I'm expressing myself. Okay, enough of that. You got it? When I say I'm painting intuitively here, I do not mean by that I'm trying to express myself. No. My intuition is purely visual, compositional, placement-wise, not like emotional. Or anyway, all right, that's enough. I just want to make sure that you understand that it's by intuitive. I don't mean trying to express myself. I do not at all subscribe. I am at war with this screwball notion that art is about self-expression. A concept barely even imagined throughout most of the millennia of human art making. The notion that the artist is expressing himself. Anyway, that's as much of a rant as I want to get into on that topic at the moment. So we'll just leave that right there. I think though, I'm going to do the trunk of this tree, which is going to be a warm gray when I'm done. Do it in some purple and some blue. Very, very fanciful tree here, by the way. I love trees, and I love painting fanciful trees. Now, this is not, the anatomy of this tree is not correct yet, so bear with me. I taught an entire class on painting trees just last fall. And I have a wonderful outline. Maybe I'll post it on my community page sometime. If you slice a tree this way at any point in its growth, you should have the same weight, the same board feet, if you will. But up here it's leaves. If you cut the tree in 1 foot, 2 foot slices, you should have essentially the same weight, in my opinion, in every 2 foot slice, from top to bottom, with a couple exceptions. One at the very bottom where the roots expand, you're going to get more weight there. And then it doesn't show on this tree very well, but right before the first major boughs, the first major limbs, there's a slight narrowing of the weight. So in that would be in this tree, would be right about there. There's slightly less weight. What I mean is, if you literally cut the tree, including the branches and everything, in 2 foot lengths, every slice of the tree, from the top until you get close to from the bottom until you get close to the top, should have the same tonnage, the same weight of organic material in it. At least visually, that's how it should appear. I'm getting too deep in the weeds on that subject, so I'm just going to leave that right there. Let's just forget that I said anything about that, and let's move on. I think I can go ahead and do some local color here. And I don't have any green in this particular kit. Let me point you down again just in case there's anybody watching who doesn't know my system here. I have in this kit 8 little, leftover food, Tupperware kind of containers that have, this is brown. I usually often don't use brown at all, but these 5 colors are all pre-mixed about 50-50 with fluid acrylics and a acrylic medium of some brand. Okay. Whoops, that's too high. Bear with me. Sorry. Shouldn't try to do that with one hand. It just doesn't work. And I don't have any green in this particular kit. I am very not fussy. I may change about this in years to come, but at the moment I am very unfussy about my greens. And maybe someday I'll become fussy about greens. And maybe when hopefully that I'll be a better painter someday. Maybe someday I'll slap my forehead. Not like this, not like the Expressionist, but with palm first, like the old commercial. I could have had a V8. That a realization. Dang, what was I thinking? I should have been fussy about my greens. Frankly, I sort of doubt that that's going to happen. The reason I'm not fussy about greens is because almost all the greens that I use in my paintings are made up anyway. Made up with, in this case, the 4 colors: orange, yellow, phthalo blue, and ultramarine. Those 4 colors of paint, so to speak. From those 4, I can get just about any color green that I want. That's why I don't care about whether it's Hooker's green, sap green, Viridian green, or what. I don't care in my oils or my acrylics. I'm going to do something I only do occasionally in the acrylic phase, and that is paint with a rag. Now, it's important whenever you paint with a rag that you don't make the mistake of thinking of this as erasing. This is not erasing, and there's a very important difference. This is painting with a rag. Now, the reason that's important is its connotation. If in your mind you think you're erasing, then you've just got the wrong mindset on. Plus, if you feel like you've made a mistake, and that's why you're erasing, then you also get this grumpy thing that comes on, what I call the spirit of eraser, or shaka waka waka waka, and you're taking stuff off because you're kind of mad at yourself. And that is a very unproductive mindset for painting. So definitely don't let the spirit of eraser come on you. But don't even think of it as erasing, because if you do, all you're thinking about is taking stuff off the canvas. Are you with me? If you're thinking of it as erasing, all you're focused on is taking stuff, paint, marks, color off the canvas, when really what you should be focused on, in my humble opinion, is what's left behind on the canvas. Not what you've taken off, but because people aren't going to walk up to your painting in 100 years and say, by golly, look what he took off. No, 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 no. They're going to walk up to your painting and look at what's on the painting. Do you see what I mean? So if your mindset is erasing, taking stuff off, you're not making a beautiful painting. Instead, you should be thinking, what, pray tell, get a little old English here, just, for atmosphere. You're thinking, what, pray tell, texture and what marks am I leaving behind on the canvas? That is the proper, again, in my humble opinion, you just can't believe how humble I am. And I'm so humble, it just about makes you sick sometimes. Ain't that right? I feel some serious sick coming on right now, just from thinking about how humble I am. All right, so, but I'll repeat what I was saying. When you're negative painting, that is painting by taking stuff off the canvas, you're not focused on what you're taking off. That would be a mistake. You're focused on what's left, what it looks like. So you're looking at, you make a mark and you look at the canvas and evaluate, measure the impact of that swipe, of that mark that you make, and you adjust accordingly. Either do another swipe or whatever, right? All right. Beat that horse to death. Dead horses, I got horse carcasses 20 feet deep all over my studio, because I beat a lot of horses to death in the course of my broadcast. Same thing with killing birds. 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm up to my armpits in dead birds around here. All right, this is kind of fun. Hello, Mr. Peeves. Well, thank you. You're very kind. He says he hasn't seen anybody do the two-handed thing as well as me. Well, that is very nice. I found a couple two-handed too. I thought we should start the International Association of Two-Handed Painters. I'm trying to start a revolution of two-handed painters. It's not going very well. Nobody has been guillotined yet. What kind of revolution is it? What kind of revolution is it? No heads rolling at all. Sorry, excuse for... Where's Robespierre when you need him? Oh boy. Oh boy. I don't, of course, mean a single word of what I just said. Not that I needed to tell you that, but you quite knew that. All right. White. It's always, this may be, I don't know. I like every stage, every phase of the painting process, but really for me, there really is something about the very first white layer, white stage. So something. I don't even know what to call it. Fun, magical, visual. And you might want to notice that I am painting into wet paint. I don't usually spray to keep the paint wet, but it just dawned on me right when I was saying that, hey, I could kind of keep the wet thing going. So that I get a real soupy alla prima kind of, alla prima is a kind of oil painting where it means all at once. It's wet and wet, as opposed to a more cautious, conservative method of painting where you wait for one layer to dry before you apply the next one. Now, ironically, I mean, I was an alla prima painter almost exclusively for years, but in the last year, in the last several months during the coronavirus craziness, I've been doing a lot more paintings by phase state. Not instead of plein air painting, I'm painting in the studio, and So I'm doing less alla prima. But anyway, I mentioned the alla prima because that's sort of, this painting wet in wet is one of the hallmarks of alla prima painting, and most plein air painting is also alla prima painting. Richard Schmid in particular, one of the elder statesmen of painting in America and probably around the world to some extent, he wrote a book. The name of his book is Everything I Know, or something about alla prima painting. So he just, in a sense, limits himself in that book to wet and wet. Anyway, so I'm getting that same effect, but strangely in acrylics, when really the alla prima label applies almost exclusively to oil painting. But the soupiness of it, the lack of control, if you will, the very thing that causes, that keeps a young or early journey painter from venturing into alla prima painting is the feeling that you don't have control, because you don't know exactly what's going to happen when you put this wet stuff on top of that wet stuff. You see, and that's control is what a beginner painter typically wants. Above all, so to speak, they want control of they would like to know what's going to happen before they put the paint down. And more mature painters, forgive me for sounding like I'm putting myself in that category, but I am. More mature painters are more adventuresome, willing to let the paint surprise them. Happy little accidents. That was Bob Ross. I say this often. That was Bob Ross's, by far, his best quote, his best description of a real painting. Bob Ross might have been a good painter. Nobody will ever know. I'm sorry. I loved his show. It really did. Was that good painting? No, no. Is it okay for some people to start out painting like Bob Ross? Of course. Should they stay there? No. All right. All right, I'm going to rinse out these brushes, and while all that paint is drying, I can grab a couple black pencils. Once again, made by Jerry's Autograma. Whoops, it's one of Jumbo Jet Black. And whoops, got some dry paint on this pencil, so it's not coming off the way it should. Hang on just a second. And that pencil, these little wooden pencil sharpeners, I've learned, don't last forever. So if you buy one at the art store for $2 or $3, buy 2 of them. Okay, now I say this all the time, but just in case there's anybody new watching, the use of the pencil serves 2 separate and contrasting functions. One is, as we all know, pencils are good for drawing. That is, delineating or outlining drawing stuff, thereby capturing an image, right? Everybody knows that. Pencils are good for drawing stuff. That's kind of dumb, but true, right? I just want to make sure I cover that base. Pencils are good for drawing stuff. But you'll discover pretty quickly, if you watch me draw for a few minutes, you'll realize, wait a minute, he's not exactly drawing. He's drawing and, that's right, I am drawing and making a mess. That is to say, making interesting marks. And between those two the interesting marks are slightly more important than the drawingness. All right, and again, forgive me, I make this speech every time just because there might be somebody watching for the first time. I didn't used to use pencils. I used to be a lot more ordinary paint. Well, I was never that ordinary. I was always weird. But anyway, I've gotten weirder as the days, weeks, years, no, not days, weeks, as the years have gone on. I've gotten weirder. It is not at all conventional to use black pencils. What is traditional in old-timey, if you will, oil painting was to start out with a charcoal sketch. But this is not that. This is, first of all, this is late in the process, and I very much want some of these lines, yes, to show in the finished painting. I don't think I have a T-square up here, so bear with me just a minute while I improvise the triangle. I do recommend, if you're anytime you're painting a seascape, or in this case it's not a seascape but it's a body of water, that you do not try to eyeball. I mean, you can, and you can get pretty close, but why risk it? Why be pretty close when you can be dead on? And make sure that you're not tormenting people. See, I was actually off quite a bit there, so I'm glad I did that. Glad I did it early. I'll do that again later if I need to. Okay, I've got a deer hidden in the bushes over here. Ears, I'll draw this deer much more carefully from reference. You know, I'll get a good photo later, but right now that's just like a marker, a placeholder. There we go, that's the word I'm looking for. It's just kind of a placeholder. And it's not going to be very prominent. The deer's kind of subtle. These things I've discussed with Buddy, my client, all of these things at some length. You know, when you're doing a commission, you don't have the same freedom, of course, that you do when you're just painting on spec, painting for yourself, and then delivering the painting, say, to a gallery. When you do that, you can just paint any of the heck the way you want to. And in some ways, that's easier. Again, no pressure, no, you know, to conform to anything. By the way, the state of utter incomplete freedom, by the way, is often the most difficult. I don't know if any of you ever experience, you know, canvas, frozen indecision, standing in front of a blank canvas. I never, I never have. Sorry to tell you, you're expecting a moment of sweet transparency. Oh, I know how you feel. No, I don't. I've never stood in front of a blank canvas and had that. But I understand other people do. So that's, I'm being only sympathetic to a degree. Anyway, part of the problem with that sometimes is the person you're not working for a commission, so that you're completely free to do whatever you want, and that, in fact, is what is causing your paralysis. Is too much freedom. That's another story for another time. We have an eagle. This is kind of fun. The eagle is very special in Buddy's life, and so he suggested an eagle, and then I suggested, oh, how about an eagle landing on this Roman ruin type column. So we settled on that. I will likewise. I will look up. I will Google, if you will, a picture of an eagle later in the process, and of course get it very accurate. Same thing with the deer. But at the moment, those marks will do as just placeholders. Hello, Jake. Yeah, it has been a while since I did a landscape, hasn't it? Thank you very much for enjoying this. I appreciate it. Thanks for speaking up. A little bit unusual right now. I'm going to do another layer of white right now. Again, that's quite different. Let me repeat what I said earlier. The most important aspect of any painting is what? Tell me, class. Play of light. All right? Most important aspect of any painting. Now, let's not be confused with one of my other mantras, which is the essence of painting, the act of painting, is making interesting marks. So you see the difference? In one case, the word painting is a noun. In the other case, the word painting is a verb. The act of painting, the most important aspect of that is making interesting marks. But the noun of a painting, the most important aspect of a painting is play of light. And of course, that's certainly, I'm very, throughout the entire process, actually, I'll be focused, as I always am. I'll be if not intently focused, then at least in a secondary sense, in the back of my mind, secondarily, will always be play of light, play of light, play of light. And the light in this painting is a strong late afternoon light coming in from the right. And speckle would be a good word. A star-spangled banner. No. Spangled light, splotchy light. Glow is always a word, but the word glow is not quite strong enough to qualify as play of light. Hey, it's been a while since I did this, so let me give you some synonyms or other words, some descriptor words for this play of light thing. All right, first of all, play of light does not mean, quote unquote, which way is the light coming from. Okay, now forgive me if you've heard this little rant before, but it's a rant that some of you need to hear because you've never heard it. Okay. Do not give yourself a pat on the back. Do not give yourself credit, so to speak, for if you're a beginner painter. Don't ever pause in your painting journey to give yourself a pat on the back for getting that correct. And that's very mean of me to say that, but I'm going to explain why here in a second. It's because I want you to be a good painter. And if you get stuck in this place where you congratulate yourself, pat yourself on the back for accomplishing this lofty feat. See, that's the problem. It's not a lofty feat. But if you pretend that it's a high bar and you achieve it, and then you congratulate yourself for achieving it, you're likely to stall out in your painting progress. I'm going to explain what that means a bit, so bear with me. So start out by saying simply, do not congratulate yourself. At least not out loud, not so anybody else can hear you. Don't even let your inner self hear yourself. Give yourself praise for getting that right. Now, of course, do you want to get that right? Of course. Oh, of course you want. Of course you have to get that right. Do you understand what is it? The it is which way is the light coming from? Like if you're drawing a ball and you have the light coming from here and it's a shadow, all that stuff. Yay, good for you. Good for you. Stop that congratulation. And here's why. Because if you think that that's a significant accomplishment, then you're liable to stall out. And one of your goals in each of your paintings will be to say, I'm going to get it right. I'm going to get it right again. I'm going to get what right? I'm going to get this. Which way is the light coming from again? Right. And let me use an analogy for a second. I play guitar, just enough guitar to be dangerous. And frankly, I'm sort of lying about that. I'm better than that. But anyway, I don't want to be truly deceptive. But anyway, let's just pretend I'm humble and say, okay, I play enough guitar to be dangerous. And when I teach guitar, there's this thing in guitar playing called bar chords, B-A-R-R-E, and that's where you slap this finger all across all 6 strings, and then you use these 3 fingers to build the rest of your chord. And to many beginner guitar players, they are allowed to start their guitar career, their guitar journey, by playing open chords, C, D, G, A, E, B7 maybe, a yucky B7. Anyway, and then, so they learn how to play guitar for maybe a month or 2, and then after a while, then their teacher says, all right, now you're ready to begin learning bar chords. And if you learn the guitar that way, then it will set you back several months in your guitar journey, because you'll learn to play the easy way, and then you'll feel like bar chords are like super advanced, when really they're not super advanced at all. They're quite elementary and simple. So anyway, for instance, I think if I have a student, now assuming the student's not above 12 years old, I'm assuming, they should learn to play bar chords from day 1, class number 1. Okay, now not every guitar teacher may agree with me about this, but I think if you start out taking a low bar, now my language, a low hurdle, and congratulate the student for getting over it, then that student will get stuck at that low hurdle for a while, and he or she doesn't need to. So that's sort of what I'm doing here with, I hope I just didn't confuse the daylights out of everybody. Don't think of which way is the light coming from as a worthy goal. That's like kindergarten. Like if you're 4 years old, you should get that right. Okay, 5. I'm exaggerating here slightly. So let me now. I said I was going to give you some descriptors or synonyms for what is play of light. What does play of light mean? All right, good. Glad you asked. No, sorry for the long detour. Let's get into it. What is play of light? Play of light is, hang on, I'm having to think for a second. Wait, not about what I'm saying, I'm thinking about what I'm painting. Play of light is words like light, dashing, smashing, exploding, splintering, glintering. I don't even know what glintering means. You know what I mean? It just sounds like glistering. Same thing, I don't know what glistering means. Unless you're a cross-country skier, you know what glister is. Anyway, a play of light is light. Ooh, then on the other hand, smooshing, fogging, misting, smudging, bouncing. Bouncing is almost too mild of a word. Let me get a little more descriptive. A beginner painter will think about light hitting an object. And again, I don't think you should get any points for that, because you'll get stuck. You'll think you've accomplished something. A more advanced painter will think about that same light bouncing off something and back onto something else. For instance, let me go ahead and do something right now in this painting as an example. So a beginner painter will think about light hitting this bit of path and pillars and greenery over here. All right, greenery over here is what I was trying to say. But we've got this big, dark, looming. You know, the most prominent element in the painting is this dark tree. Okay, so now I'm thinking, wait a minute. If all this light is hitting this, then some of this light is going to get bounced back on the dark side of this tree. Now, I'm not sure I'm using the right color for that bounce, but that's right. Let's just an example. So that's just sort of an example of how a better informed, more advanced painter might think about. Now, I'm mixing up some opaque orange here. where I want to do, it's just here and there, I want to do the sun, warm late afternoon sun coming through the foliage, coming through the branches and splattering. See, that's a word. So I hope you didn't try to write down all those words. It's real. Let me try to give you a category. What is play of light? It's light, and then the word, the verb, you want it to be a violent word or a high energy word, not a passive word. For instance, a bad word would be, let's take this column right here and say, oh, the light is hitting this side of the column. That is not play of light. Instead, you want a more violent word. Play of light is light exploding off this. Now, I'm going to do this later, but just because I'm talking about it right now. So that might mean, and of course I've got orange on my brushes, but see, now I've got the idea of light hitting that pillar and then bouncing off into the atmosphere. So it's violent words is what you want, not safe. Even the word hitting, which can be violent, but when it comes to light, it's not violent enough. It's not dramatic enough. You can use the word dramatic if you're afraid of the word violent. But does that make sense? I haven't talked about that in a long time. But that's speckling. I'd like to come up with a more violent word than that. It's not quite dramatic enough. Dramatic is a better word. I hope you understand. I hope you're playing with me. When I'm doing this, you could take all kinds of offense and say, "This man's a violent man." Yes. Would to God, all of my violence only never goes any further than the paint on my canvas. Wouldn't. Most of the violence I struggle with is the violence that happens inside. You can ask my wife about this. I've never laid an angry, by God's grace, I've never laid an angry hand on her in 40 years. Most of the violence I struggle with happens between my ears. Most of it when I'm alone. I'm just being real transparent here since it came up. And some of you, I said, by the way, as a related subject, several years ago, all of our children are married now, but several years ago, two of our engaged couples were, no, one was engaged, one was married. Anyway, newlyweds, and I said the tragic reality that most women discover after they get married is that their husband is a man. It's one of the hardest things for them to deal with. Because I'm sorry, I'm getting myself in trouble because I'm not a professional counselor. Well, that's not true. Anyway, never mind. I took a whole lot of counseling courses at the master's level. It doesn't mean I'm a counselor. Anyway, forgive me. Let's just back out of this topic, shall we? Anyway, there's a grain of truth in there somewhere, if you care to dig it out. I got from violent words. Hello, Christy Campbell. Thanks for saying hi. I appreciate it, and thank you for the compliment. All right, next, I'm going to graduate to some smaller brushes. Oh, good, and I have nice long handle brushes here. Yeah, then once again, there's my sketch that I did. Me and Buddy hammered it out over a number of days. So that's what I'm looking at, but excuse me while I move you guys a little bit. All right. Smaller brushes now, by far the smallest that I've used thus far in this painting, and I'm going to do some more drawing. Okay, so I draw. Oh boy, I draw a distinction between drawing and painting, so to speak. Even though I'm using paint, when I'm using a brush like this and doing big, wide, I call that painting. When I'm using a brush like this and doing skinny little lines, I call that drawing with brushes. Okay, just that's, you don't have to use my terminology at all, but I just want you to understand what I'm saying. And I'm going to do more fine line. This is, we've got ivy climbing up these columns. Definitely part of the charm of the scene. So once again, I just a few minutes ago, I decided to call this an idealized landscape. It's sort of like a mild fantasy. When Buddy and I first started talking about this project, he used the term, he said, sort of like fantasy. But then as we worked it out, I think we figured out what he had in mind. It's a fictitious location. I used to do, ironically, a lot of this kind of stuff. And I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It correlates pretty closely to English landscape painting. That's if you just Google English landscape painting, I think you'll be taken back to 19th century, maybe 18th century. And idealized would be a good description for that, a lot of that work. You know, the idyllic, the sheep on the hillside, you know, the shepherd. There's no shepherd in this scene, but there's going to be a deer. Speaking of which, this would be a good time to just scribble in a hint of the deer, kind of hiding in the bushes there. So I'm drawing, and you may have noticed I was using of a reddish purple. Now I'm using a bluish purple. Because whenever possible, rather than using like black or brown, or what I call dark black, B-L-E-C-K, which is a neutral, neutral gray brown color, rather than using a color like that essentially kills color. Generally, as artists, we're not terribly focused on trying to kill colors. Generally, color is our friend, so we want to infuse more color into our paintings whenever possible, not obliterate or obscure or diminish the color in our paintings. Generally speaking, all things being equal, and of course many times things are not equal, so that there's many exceptions to that. There's certainly a place for melancholy, monochromatic, or gloomy, foggy, misty, dark paintings, and I love that kind of stuff, evidently more than most people do, because whenever I venture to do a gray, brown, gloomy, monochromatic painting, which, as I said, which I love, I have discovered that most of the time I have a little bit of a hard time selling those. So evidently I like that kind of thing more than most people. So maybe they like it and they just don't want to put it on their wall. But so there's a place for that. But anyway, the point being, all things being equal, usually we want more color in our paintings, not less. Of course, that can be taken to an extreme, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to talk about that. I know what I'm going to do next, though. As soon as I finish this little bit of drawing, I need to come in here real quickly because it's starting to irritate me already, and do some big brush. Again, 4-inch brush will do fine. Some large, dark zones where the canvas is overall is quite too light. I'm going to open my brown paint. So there we go. I guess I'm going to use brown in this painting because I do need, all of a sudden I need some really dark lines over here. I've just last week or two, maybe when I was doing the sketch for this, I talked about people who are artists in history who are awesome at painting trees. Let me see how many of those I can remember. I didn't do any review or study. John David Carlson, Maxfield Parrish, Andrew Wyatt, and Ivan Shishkin. There you go. That's quite the list. I'm pretty proud of myself that I was able to recall that. But if you are a landscape painter, especially if you're an early journey painter and a landscape painter, if you're a landscape painter, that probably means you're going to paint trees, right? And I'm sure there are many others that are just incredible tree painters that I just don't know. But that's a pretty good list. Let me give it to you again. Maxfield Parrish. Now then, this is not in any particular order. Maxfield Parrish, American artist, early 20th century. John David Carlson. I think it's John David. He's got a book about painting. He's a mid 20th century American painter. Andrew Wyeth. I hope you know, watercolor painter, Pennsylvania. Chad's Ford. Basically painted his entire career painting nothing but his own farm. That's very inspiring to me. One of the most famous watercolorists in the world, certainly one of the most famous American watercolors of all time. And yes, just some trees that could just make you cry. If you don't cry at a Andrew Wyeth tree, something's wrong with you. All right, then who else did I say? Oh, Ivan Shishkin. Maybe you can tell by the name. Russian, early 20th century, I think. Maybe early to mid 20th century, I'm not sure. He has been, somewhere I saw him designated as the greatest painter of forest, woods, woodlands, trees in history. Now, goodness knows, can you prove such a thing? Of course not. You can't prove such a thing. But just the fact that somebody can seriously be nominated in such a manner gives you some idea. In fact, his most famous painting is of two bear cubs climbing up a fallen dead tree. And maybe just from that description you go, oh, I've seen that painting. If you haven't, just Ivan Shishkin, spelled just the way it sounds. When you look at it, you go, it's very possible you've seen that painting. It's one of the most, one of those plagiarized on dinner plates and shower curtains and ceramic pot holders. There's no telling how much money that man, his family, has lost by illegal reproduction of his famous painting. Anyway, Ivan Shishkin. So I think I named them all. Maybe you can just tell by the list that I'm a fan of tree painting. And I don't really get to do a lot of it with all my cityscapes, right? In the last 15 years, I've done, cityscapes have sort of become my stock in trade. And I've missed doing so much cityscape. I'm by the way that I'm painting, especially right this minute, is really a good clinic for some of you on how to paint trees. And by that I mean the literal movements that my hands are making. But I'm done. Too late, you missed it. Oh my goodness, you see some horrible trees in the world of painters, beginner painters. Sorry to pick on you beginners. So I'm not talking about you. Just Rest assured. I'm talking about them other guys. Hello, Christy Campbell. Thanks for speaking up. You're very welcome. Thanks for the compliment. Cause YouTube video scrolls through 350 plus Shishkin paintings. Oh, good. Thank you. That's cool. Thank you. Thank you. Good to know that. So Cause says just go to YouTube and Google, do a search for Shishkin, spelled just the way it sounds. And he says goes through 350 paintings, really? That's a lot. Wow. Cool. All right, I've just mixed up some dark orange, purple, blue. Did you catch that? What color I'm going to get? Or. Let's get a little bit more greenish now. So that means I'm picking up phthalo blue and yellow, straight up yellow. I don't know what color yellow, but it's not cad yellow because I don't want to have to worry about cadmium. Oh, yeah, some. Do you see the big brushes? And notice the way that I'm handling them. This is really important, and it's important for those of you who are saying, I don't want to get loose. Okay, well then use some 4-inch brushes, okay? Don't talk to me again about getting loose till you come back with your 4-inch brushes. I don't want to hear it. Okay, you've got some 4-inch brushes and you're using them. I'm being kind of silly, you understand? Don't complain to me or anybody else about I want to get loose, all right? But besides that, it's more than the size of the brush, it's the way that I handle them. I paint, again, when I'm painting like that big, I paint in zones. I could say, I want this corner to be dark. So I didn't take a brush like this, stick on my tongue and go, forgive me for the mocking gesture, but sometimes you need to get rough for students to learn. Do you see? When you make the dark, it's tree darker. Sorry, that is really mean. That is really mean, and I'm not mocking or imitating any of you. I promise. I've never seen you paint. So, but I've seen a lot of people paint. You can tell. Oh boy. All right, I'm having fun. Sorry about you. Silliness, pure silliness. Some of the stuff I say is just silly, and I hope you understand that. I'm going to now mix up some warm tones, some yellow orange, and add some medium to that. Acrylic medium is basically acrylic medium. Like there's no, with oil, there's like 50 different mediums that you can use with oils. But with acrylics, it's mostly, there's different things you can use too for different effect. But it's just called medium, acrylic medium. That's part of the chemical difference, if you will, between the world of acrylics and the world of oils. Because, anyway, never mind. I don't want to chase that down any more than that. That's all. I don't have the energy. Once again, though, I hope you're noticing the messy manner. I paint regions. I paint zones, and in a messy manner, right? It very rarely, in these early stages, do I want to diminish, obscure, push down, obfuscate. Texture. No, I want more texture, not less. Again, similar to what I said earlier about all things being equal. Usually artists, we want more color, not less. We want more values, range of values, not less. Generally speaking, we should want more texture, not less. Of course, especially with that last one, as you probably know, that if you do too much texture everywhere, the painting becomes too busy. Right, so all of those things, color, texture, values, are all handled sort of in tension, in balance, in tension, or in ratios. I'm really saying the same thing 3 different ways. Tension, balance, ratios. All right, so rarely am I trying to, most of the time I'm trying to, let me put it in the positive, most of the time I'm trying to create more texture, not less. All right, I'm just about done with this, what I'm doing right now I would call glazing. Clever boy that I am. I call this, I'm being silly because it's so obvious that this is a glaze. And in a minute, it'd be just a minute, just a couple minutes, I really mean. I'm going to do one more layer of acrylic white. That will be my 3rd. Usually I do 2. This painting, for some reason, it's got 3 distinct separate layers of white. But in a minute here, I'll be doing, when I finish this, so I've got pink, I've got transparent magenta on my brushes. Let's do more of that. And I think when I finish this magenta, that I'll do one last layer of white, and then I'll be ready to, and then I switch to oils. Okay, so it's been a nice productive day. By the way, let me show you the painting I did earlier today. Just some of you might have caught this. This is, I only have 2 or 3 layers left. It's wet. Tomorrow it'll be dry, or next time I paint it. I'll do glazes, transparent over everything. Wipe some off, then I do sparkle, palette knife, and I'm done. Anyway, that's oils, of course. All my paintings, virtually all of my paintings are like this. Acrylics underneath and oils on top. Making quite much of flowers, especially reddish flowers in this particular painting. So that's kind of fun. Whoops, I forgot. There's water down here. And now I'm painting with a rag. Ooh, that almost works just like that. Oh, that's all. So I want to put a little bit of blue down here as an underpainting for the water. I do not want blue there. That was a mistake. Hello, Barbara. Good to have you here. How are you doing? What are you painting today? Are you painting today? You must be, because you're watching me, so you must be painting. I know where I fit in, Barbara. She listens to my drivel in the background and laughs and then does a good painting. Am I right? All right, bear with me just a second here. I'm going to, I think I'm done with all these colored pots of paint, so I'm going to cover them up so they don't dry while I do other things. And I'm going to just leave the white open. I say this often, but just again, in case there's somebody watching, if you only get to watch me do this part of the painting process, I'm glad you're able to catch this mark, but you don't understand how I paint. Because if we stop now, you would think, oh yeah, if you were to recall me or in the future, or describe me to someone, and say, yeah, he's this guy, he paints with 2 hands and he paints real fast, and big brushes and he just paints all crazy, and it actually comes out, right? Is that a fair description that somebody might say of my painting style? But it's wrong, because if you stick around, which I won't get to today, but if you stick around much longer, you will discover, when I get to the final edit layer, which is in oils, everything slows down. I mean, scrolls down, slows down almost to a snail's pace. And instead of being all messy, messy, messy and fast, I'm slow and careful. Now, that I don't mean by that precise and accurate and tight. Unless I'm doing a portrait, then yes, and then I do tongue painting, right? But if it's not a portrait, then even then I get much slower. So if someone were to only watch me do what I call my final edit layer, again, they would have a completely wrong impression about how I paint, because they would have missed all of this crazy, crazy fast stuff. So I don't know how long I've been painting on this particular painting, but I think you would admit, I don't know how long, 30 or 40 minutes maybe? That's pretty darn fast. So I've essentially got the 24 by 36 inch canvas is all drawn in, if you will. All that's left now is the details. That's a slight exaggeration, but I'll let it go. What's the most important aspect of a painting, right? I harped on this already at the beginning of this broadcast. Barbara, you can't answer. Barbara's a regular. So is cause, I suppose, right? Yeah, it's the most important aspect of a painting, play of light, right? And I talked about that quite a bit tonight. And you're looking for violent words. Exploding, light careening, life bouncing. In fact, let's do some careening and bouncing right here. This is kind of like premature fuzz layer for those of you who are regulars, you know about my fuzz layer. But I'm, as you can imagine, with this white acrylic, opaque white paint, I'm thinking very much about play of light, right? You know, that thinking of that, the play of light thing. A couple times, I think it's twice, anyway. I've been in Amsterdam. I sound like a real jet setter here, but I'm not, but I sound like it. On somebody else's dime, I might add. That is to say, I was not paying for it. Somebody else had to pay for it to get me to Amsterdam. Been there 3 times. Isn't that funny? Each time, like I said, for work. But anyway, the Rijksmuseum, R-E-I-J. There's a J in there somewhere. The Rijksmuseum is essentially Rembrandt's museum. Now, there's a whole lot more than just Rembrandt, but it is the Rembrandt museum in the world. It's the Rijksmuseum. And that's where his most famous painting, traditionally entitled The Night Watch. More recently, you know, Captain Banningcock and his militia or something like that. And almost in the same room as The Night Watch is another painting. I am broadcasting. You could talk to me. Can you talk to me anyway? Okay, will do. Thanks, Kay. Love you. Thanks for going over there. Rijksmuseum. Almost, if you know what to search for, you can find an image of it, but I wouldn't know what to tell you. Anyway, in the same museum, almost in the same room as Rembrandt's most famous painting, traditionally called The Night Watch. When they cleaned it back 80 years ago or something, they discovered it was not a nighttime scene at all. It was just so caked with dark varnish that it looked like night. So they cleaned it and then had to change the title because it was no longer nighttime. Anyway, I want to tell you about another painting that's in that same museum, almost in the same room, or right around the corner, right down the hall. And this painting is, I think it's 10 or 12 feet tall, and as I remember, about 30 feet long. Okay, now in America, here in the land of the plebes, we some of you are going, what's a plebe? Anyway, Google it. We would call that a mural. I mean, goodness, I'm going to go paint a mural tomorrow. When I'm all done, it'll be 10 feet high and 37 feet wide. So there you go, just a little bit bigger than this one I'm talking about. There the comparison ends. Anyway, this painting that I'm trying to describe, it's pretty famous, you know, because it's in the Rijksmuseum. And anyway, it is, you want to talk about realism or photorealism or hyperrealism, it is all of those. I mean, it is just insane. There's about 50 people in the painting, most of them life-size portraits, and many of them full-size figures. The front row, you know, the people behind, we can't see their whole figure because they're being blocked by the figures in front. And I remember especially there's one man wearing armor, and that typical, you know, medieval kind of bulbous iron, I don't know, you know, pounded out thing that kind of comes to a little point, you know. I mean, you can walk up and look at it like this, and you would almost swear that if you tapped on it, it would clang. And there's other figures wearing fur, and you walk up and you can look this close, and you would swear that if you rubbed it, it would rub like fur. I mean, this thing is just insane, unbelievable, and it's huge. Right? Am I impressing you? Are you getting impressed? I hope so. I'm trying to impress you. Just huge, and wall to wall, floor to ceiling, hyper realistic, essentially from top to bottom. But here's the amazing thing. I mean, it is absolutely jaw-dropping, and I wouldn't take anything away from that at all. But people don't fly around the world to see this painting. In fact, it's almost, other than that I mean, I'm sure it's famous in its own way, but none of you have ever heard of it unless you've been to the Rijksmuseum. Because everybody flies around the world and drives or takes the Euro pass or whatever across Europe to get to Amsterdam, to get to the Rijksmuseum to see what? To see Rembrandt's Night Watch, wrongly named Night Watch. Why? That is a very good art school question. Why do people pay big money, go through great extremes to see Rembrandt's Night Watch, while just 40 feet away is a painting that is so much more realistic than Rembrandt's Night Watch? But it doesn't have a safety rope around it like Night Watch does, you know, velvet rope and guards, armed guards. I don't know if they're armed, but you know, I'm being silly, but you get the idea. You know, big bouncers nearby protecting one of the most valuable paintings in history. And what's the difference, you may ask? First of all, you could say, well, maybe Rembrandt's portraits are more accurate than this other guy. And I assure you, that is not the case. I mean, Rembrandt's portraits are plenty accurate. I could go off again for another 25 minutes gasping for praise air. I'm positively flatulent in my praise of of Rembrandt's realism. All right, that's not the subject. No, do they go to, sorry you guys, do they go look at Rembrandt because it's more realistic? The answer is a resounding no. No, no, no. What is it? Here's the answer. Rembrandt's erroneously titled Night Watch is an absolute wonder of play of light. I mean, it's light careening, it's light exploding, it's light secondary and tertiary, third degree reflecting, glancing, bouncing, besmudging, besmirching. It's light doing all kinds of acrobatics that like I say, it is just an absolute world-class clinic for what does play of light mean. And there you go. That's just me waxing euphoric about the significance of play of light. And of course, virtually all of Rembrandt's paintings possess that magical, amazing degree of play. But use that word. You use a word that way. Hey, since I'm waxing eloquent about Rembrandt, okay, it's been a while since I went all euphoric on you about Rembrandt, so it's about time for a refresher course. Here's one of the ways I like to get euphoric about Rembrandt. And by the way, one of the things I do habitually say to early journey painters is don't compare yourself to your peers. Don't try to beat, so to speak. Don't compete, and I mean compete really in the friendly sense of the word, not in the, you know, I'm using compete, and I don't know how to say it. It's not a cutthroat, dark, nasty thing. It's other people's excellence can and should provoke us, inspire us to greater works. I'm using compete in that, which that's what it does to me. When I see somebody who's a better painter than I am, it provokes me, it inspires me. Just being around better painters, I become a better painter, literally. About 15 or 20 years ago, this man named David Hockney, who was a very famous modern artist, contemporary artist from England. Very, does weird stuff himself. But he's quite, David Hockney, you can look him up. You can look him up. Yeah, kind of weird stuff. But he wrote a book about, again, 15 to 20 years ago, I don't know when. And the thesis of his book, and I forget what it's called, but you could find it easily, just with the information I'm about to give you. David Hockney wrote a book, and he sort of, it was sort of an expose. He revealed to the world that most of the great painters throughout history, and I would think starting maybe in 1000 or 1200 AD, something like that. So he's not going back to cave painting or anything like that. And maybe it's beginning in the 1400s, but I think no later than that is my guess. Again, I'm just rambling. I haven't done the research recently, but the last 500 years of painting, say. And his thesis in the book is that most of the great painters used photomechanical tricks. That is to say, they cheated, which I've turned over a new leaf in the last several months, and I'm trying not to use the word cheating anymore, because someone explained to me that I was damaging some early journey painters, and that was a good point. Anyway, so I don't use the word cheating, but that they used photomechanical tricks, like most distinctly the camera obscura, which, if any of you took an art history course way back in high school or college, you learned about the camera obscura, sitting in a great big box with it's basically a pinhole camera big enough for a human being to get inside of, okay? And they used things like that and other pinhole camera kind of devices to capture, to draw, to render the objects in their masterpieces. Okay, you with me so far? So David Hockney said he proved that most of the great masters through history, these people, Rubens, Titian, you name it, that we admire, that they used, and of course he caused quite the furor in the art world with this thesis. There were a number of people that were quite offended and felt like he was sort of demoting their godlike painters. And a number of people came up with rebuttals and arguments, and you can look up those as well. I will just say to you, in my humble opinion, I don't have a dog in this fight, but if you really watch, like there's a really good documentary. You don't have to read the book. I didn't buy the book, but I did stand in Barnes & Noble and read it for 2 hours one time. I'm one of those. If I had known how much I was going to refer to this book, this is 15 years ago, I would have bought it. Maybe I still should. Probably still should. Anyway, the part of the reason I'm saying all this, in the middle of the book, he has a centerfold. And he has a timeline. He lists on this timeline through history all of the great artists. And when I say all, you know what I mean. As far as anybody can tell, it's all the great artists through history. And he has them listed, and I think he describes on the timeline what kind of photomechanical device this artist used to capture their subject matter. On the same timeline, he has kind of a bar graph that goes up and down like this, and he measures or evaluates each artist on realism. That is to say, how realistic and accurate are their paintings, right? So there's a timeline that goes this way, then each artist is measured by a bar graph, in his humble opinion, I guess I would say, in David Hockney's opinion, about how accurate they were. And so, as you can imagine, there's a direct correlation between did this artist use photomechanical means, and if he or she did, tragically most of them were he's, but that's another story. Uh-oh, we just disappeared. Okay, came back. All right. If the artist used photomechanical means, then they got a very high realism score. Does that make sense? Just as you would expect, right? If the artist did not, because some of them didn't, if the artist did not use photomechanical means, then they got a low score on the realism scale. Again, just as you would expect. Same thing would happen in any high school or college art class in the Western world today, right? Those who project and trace and outline and so on, grid and so on, are going to have a more realistic rendering than those who do not, generally speaking. All right, so the chart goes along, and there's a correlation with everyone, except, and again, this is David Hockney, so you'll have to take it up with him. By the way, I'm going to cheat here a little bit. Let me think. How am I going to cheat? I want some... never mind. Won't worry about it. Change my mind again. I am going to worry about it. I'm going to do some opaque yellow. So I'm sort of cheating my technique here a little bit, because normally, theoretically, at this stage, all of my marks are supposed to be opaque white, all right? But I'm cheating because now I'm doing opaque pale yellow. All right, so all the way along David Hockney's timeline, artists, those who used photomechanical means, compared to how realistic they were. And in every case, if they used photomechanical means, they rated higher on the realism scale, with one outrageous, bodacious, crazy exception. And you know where this is going? I think this is fascinating. And I saw this, again, I saw this 12, 15 years ago. That exception was Rembrandt. David Hockney ranked Rembrandt's artwork, generally speaking, I think, as the most realistic in the entire history of art. That's pretty high praise. I'm not positive that's the case, but that's what my memory tells me. And Rembrandt used no photomechanical means. That just kind of reinforces my gaga. I am gaga over Rembrandt. I admit it. I confess it. I own it. I admit it. I don't like being gaga about stuff most of the time, but I am pretty much gaga over Rembrandt. Now, I was before I read David Hockney's book, but that was a pretty big, boost, shot in the arm for my Gagaism. Anyway, and there's no reason for me to tell you that, other than just think it is doggone fascinating. Just fascinating. So how does somebody get that good? And as perhaps you know, if you're envisioning a Rembrandt painting, like one of his many self-portraits, it's not tight, accurate, depth control grip, tight ass realism painting, right? Not at all. Not at all. Whew. Oh, here's one more. Since I'm gaga on Rembrandt, let's just continue for just another minute. I think you can find this on Google too, based on my description. Look up the words David Hockney, best drawing ever done, or best drawing in history, something like that. And guess what? No surprise now, in light of everything else I've said, David Hockney picks a quaint little ink brush, pen and ink, maybe it's pen, maybe it's brush, I don't remember. Quaint little drawing by Rembrandt. And it's worth looking at. I use it. I have a copy of it. I use it in my drawing classes all the time. Every time I do a drawing class, when I'm trying to communicate to students what actually is the best drawing, which is, as you can imagine, is not pure realism. That is, realism is important. You just heard me go gaga over how realistic Rembrandt is. It's not a tight realism, but it's realism nonetheless. And are we still there? Yep. And there's something about this. I think I've got too much lake right there. So bear with me. I'm going to do a quick modification in my drawing. Let's see if I can get this. Oh yeah, that'll do. That's pretty quick. Nobody will suspect a thing. I want some bushes on this side of the lake coming up. Anyway, so there we go. My paean of praise, or is it paean? I think it's paean. My my hymn of praise to the god Rembrandt is finished. The rest of you can come out now. Gag, is he done talking about Rembrandt? I can't stand it when he talks about Rembrandt. Oh boy. Okay, while I've been ranting, what are you guys talking about? Hello, Christy Campbell. Thanks for saying hi. Hang on just a second. What else did you say? I'm looking for a rag and not finding it. Hang on. I just had a rag a minute ago, I promise. Oh, well, thank you. Just a nice compliment. Painting oh, you painted poppies. Way to go, Barbara. Eating dinner. On your dinner time entertainment. That's a weird picture, Barbara. I gotta admit. Hello, Susan. Nice to hear from you. Yeah. Oh, is it fuzzy sound? Thank you, Susan. Let me turn it all the way up and check on that. Forgive me. Oh, it is. Doggone it. I am so sorry. It was perfectly clear. I have yet to figure out. Thank you, Susan. You did the same service for me yesterday. Okay, you're my sound tech, Susan. I don't know why. It starts out perfectly clear, and then at some point gets yeah, the long hair. I was wondering if anybody was going to notice my shaggy mane. I feel terrible for my hair cutter lady. You know, she was not making boatloads of money before this thing hit. I just feel terrible. Anyway, we're doing a little bit of just a comment again about the tree. It's pretty obvious. It's pretty extreme in this case, but a tree at an angle is way more dramatic than a tree straight up. Even though I can think of some Maxfield Parrish trees that are pretty doggone dramatic. And you know what? I'm changing my mind. I'm gonna paint just a little bit more. Sorry to change my mind. I just realized I want some. And I'm going to do, again, cheating, so to speak, cheating my technique. I'm going to do some leaves, foliage down here in the foreground. I don't want to try to accomplish all of that in oil. In other words, I want some These are ferns down here, and I want some of this stuff. So I'm using, again, cheating my system by using an opaque color instead of transparent. Theoretically, all of this should be done transparent white and then glazed in green. But that's the theory. The reality is I don't have to. I'm saving time by doing it this way. I don't know if Buddy is watching or not. I didn't give him much notice. Buddy, if you're there, hello. I hope you're catching it, but in any case, I expect he'll watch it later. So, Buddy, I hope you're enjoying the process. I'm enjoying doing this for you very much. And I'm happy to say that at the moment, I kind of like the painting. It's good to know, isn't it? Thank you, Susan, again for notifying me about the noisy sound. It's related to my power plug-in, and maybe I should invest in some kind of sound cleaner, power cleaner. I looked into it earlier, but it didn't apply to what I was doing at the time, so I quit looking into it, but maybe I should look again. In other words, it won't do me any good when I'm out in the field, but I've been doing so much not out in the field painting here lately that maybe I should just buy a device that cleans up my power for me. All right, I am going to end there. Dang, it is 7 o'clock. And I have a little bit more. I could work on an illustration tonight without your company, and that would be just fine. So, next, and by the way, I mentioned this earlier, let me repeat, I will not be broadcasting during the day tomorrow. If I have the energy, I'll do something tomorrow night. But I'm going to be back at a job where I'm doing a mural in a place of business, and they are not allowing me to broadcast, so, which is understandable. So I will be happily and busily working the next 2.5 or 3 days, finishing this 10-foot tall by, it'll be 37-foot long mural. So I'll be once again incommunicado for the next couple days, which I hate, but I like making money more than I hate being incommunicado. So sorry guys, now you know where you fit in the pecking order. I love you, but I love making money more. I'm sure that's a great surprise to you. I'm happy to say that I'm halfway the painting. So again, for anybody, if there is anybody new watching, this is acrylics. The next thing I am going to do is oil glaze, any colors I want over the whole thing. By the way, it looks pretty close, doesn't it? Yeah, surprisingly. So oil glazes, then a fuzz layer, or do atmosphere and soft edges, then dark details in pencil, dark details in brush, then final edit, then another glaze, then sparkle. So only 7 more layers to go. Anyway. Again, thank you for your company. Hope you have a great Tuesday evening. And if I don't see you before this weekend, have a great rest of the week. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.